Good evening and welcome to NTD News. I'm Stephanie Cox. Here are today's top stories. Nebraska is answering Texas's calls for help at the border. They'll be sending state patrol troopers to the border later this month. The Supreme Court sides with student athletes in a unanimous decision allowing more compensation for the players. A CBS news anchor calls out the network during a live weather report. She says she'll be discussing alleged discrimination by CBS with Project Veritas later this week. This comes just 1 week after a Fox 26 reporter did the same thing. And the court tosses out a nurse's case against a Houston hospital's vaccine mandate. She appeals, looking to take it to a higher court. Nebraska is sending troops to the U.S.-Mexico border to help law enforcement there. Governor Pete Ricketts made the announcement on Saturday. NTD's Christina Kim has more details.
Shortly after the governors of Arizona and Texas asked 48 states for help at the U.S.-Mexico border, Florida answered their calls. Now, Nebraska is joining in. On June 19th, Governor Pete Ricketts announced Nebraska will send around 25 State Patrol troopers to Del Rio, Texas later in June. They're going to Del Rio possibly because their Border Patrol sector has seen a significant surge of migrants in recent months. The troopers will partner with the Texas Department of Public Safety, and the deployment will last no longer than 16 days. This comes as more than 50 House Republican lawmakers are calling on President Biden to replace VP Harris as the border czar. They note she has yet to visit the border and say 180,000 encounters and a 21-year high at the border is unacceptable. Harris said she would visit the border in the future and said she is addressing the root causes of the crisis. Typically, only federal officers under Border Patrol or ICE can detain people for immigration offenses. But because Governors Abbott and Ducey declared a disaster and an emergency, state police can make arrests in their states. Ricketts said the disastrous policies of the Biden-Harris administration created an immigration crisis at the border and that Nebraska is stepping up to help Texas. Christina Kim, NTD News.
All 9 members of the Supreme Court ruled in lockstep on Monday. They say that student athletes could receive more benefits, and this could lead to competition between schools to try to recruit the best athlete. NTD's Lynn Lin reports.
The National Collegiate Athletic Association of NCAA has curbed education-related benefits to student athletes. These non-cash payments include benefits like computers or musical equipment. But the Supreme Court just ruled against the organization, instead siding with the students. The unanimous ruling opens the door for student athletes to get more non-cash compensation, and this could reshape the billion-dollar college sports industry.
There is going to be an opening of at least competition for what's being offered to them for student benefits, for educational benefits. That's going to become a new plane where schools are going to compete when they're trying to get athletes to come to their schools.
The NCAA argued that limiting players' pay helps to distinguish between amateur and pro sports, but the Supreme Court ruled it violates federal antitrust law. Justice Brett Kavanaugh said the NCAA is not above the law, and nowhere else in America can businesses get away with agreeing not to pay their workers a fair market rate.
It opens the door for the possibility that we could one day see student athletes being paid some amount for their services.
This comes as several states, including California, allow students to make money from their name, image, and likeness. Congress is also considering legislation on this issue. Lin Lin, NTD News.
White farmers are challenging part of the recent stimulus law in court. They say a farm loan relief program discriminates against white people instead of treating all Americans the same. NTD's Patrick Caden speaks to a lawyer representing some of the farmers.
White farmers in Illinois are suing the government over a farm loan relief program that allocates benefits based on skin color. In March, Congress passed the American Rescue Plan. The $2 trillion bill includes government debt relief to farmers, but only if they are a racial minority.
If you're black, if you're Hispanic, if you're Asian, anything other than white, you get your loans completely forgiven at 120%. And if you're white, you get nothing from the program.
Roper is challenging the program, saying it fails to adhere to equal protections under the law, which is the Fifth Amendment. The farmers' debt relief portion is only a tiny part of the huge emergency bill that was passed.
So I think it probably didn't get the vetting that normally you would have with this type of legislation because of the speed they were trying to get it passed. But the government is attempting to justify it by saying, well, in the past, there has been discrimination against racial minorities.
But he says past discrimination has already been taken into consideration.
They've set up new programs. They've set up new agencies within the Department of Agriculture, and they've paid out over $2 billion to settle class action lawsuits challenging discrimination.
Roper says his clients are frustrated at the inequality. They're requesting preliminary injunctions to put the government program on hold while the case is running. Roper says there are more cases like this that will be filed. Patrick Hayden, NTD News.
Another news reporter has called out their media outlet during a live broadcast. This time, a weather anchor at CBS 62 in Detroit, Michigan. She says she'll be discussing alleged discrimination by CBS with Project Veritas this week. NTD's Grace Coulter has the story.
Good evening and thanks for watching First Forecast.
What seemed like a normal weather report took an unexpected turn Sunday morning when CBS 62 meteorologist and anchor April Moss announced she would expose the network whilst live on air.
Plenty of sunshine today, but all good things must come to an end, and that starts as early as tomorrow morning with showers moving in around 8 a.m. And speaking of a brand new week, I will be sitting down this week with Project Veritas to discuss the discrimination that CBS is enforcing upon its employees. Tune in to Project Veritas for my full story. Now, later Monday, we will see those showers continuing through late morning, but by evening, we'll see dry.
She went straight back to giving the weather forecast like nothing had happened. NTD News reached out to CBS 62 and Moss, but we didn't hear back from them before airtime. It's not known if Moss is still working for the network or if any disciplinary measures have been taken against her. Moss is the third reporter to come forward in the last few months. Just last week, Fox 26 reporter Ivory Hecker was suspended after she also called out her network during a live broadcast.
Right, before we get to that story, I want to let you, the viewers, know that Fox Corp has been muzzling me to keep certain information from you, the viewers, and from what I'm gathering, I am not the only reporter being subjected to this.
The next day, she released a video with undercover journalism nonprofit Project Veritas, just as Moss is expected to. In March, former Fox 10 news anchor Carrie Lake announced she was leaving the network, citing the direction of her newsroom. In a tweet, Lake commended Moss and told the, quote, corrupt news media that their days are numbered. She wrote, "People are waking up to your propaganda, bias, and lies. To the honest journalists still working in the fake news, do the right thing and get out." She applauded Moss and Hecker, saying, "Courage is contagious." Project Veritas told NTD that they're hoping to set in motion a movement, saying they hope Moss and Hecker will inspire more journalists to come forward. Grace Coulter, NTD News.
And Project Veritas told NTD News that their interview with Moss will be released tomorrow. We'll keep you up to date as the story develops. And hospital workers are fighting for the right to turn down vaccines in Texas and keep their jobs. A federal judge has tossed the case out, but they've already appealed. NTD's Miguel Moreno has that story.
Get a shot or lose your job. That's the predicament some hospital workers are facing in Texas. The Houston Methodist Hospital is requiring staff to get vaccinated against COVID-19 or else.
This is the first time they've literally terminated people.
Nurse Jennifer Bridges tells me she's worked there for 7 years. Joined by over 100 other hospital workers, she sued the hospital over their policy. But a federal judge recently threw her case out, saying Bridges can freely choose to accept or refuse a COVID-19 vaccine. However, if she refuses, she will simply need to work somewhere else. Bridges has since appealed. She argues that since the FDA hasn't approved of the available emergency use COVID vaccines, employees can't be required to take them.
Hypothetically speaking, let's say you lose your case. Is fighting for this right, the ability to turn down a vaccine, worth losing your job over?
Oh, most definitely. My actual official termination date is today. We just completed our 2-week unpaid suspension, and I've already found another job. And yes, most definitely. Like, I want to fight this as hard as possible. I am getting so many people, thousands of people across the world now to support us and help us and stand together, because it's so much more important than just my job. I can find another job, I can struggle for a couple of months, but the public needs to know the truth about this, and they need to get proper informed consent.
Put another way, she says employees must be informed volunteers if they are to be vaccinated with experimental vaccines. They can't be coerced. The Houston Methodist Hospital hasn't gotten back to us. In a company memo, CEO Mark Boom says the COVID vaccines are safe and extremely effective, which made it easier for them to mandate the treatment. But like other vaccines, people have suffered from mild to serious adverse reactions or died after getting them. Bridges is waiting for her next court date. She tells me she'll take her case all the way up to the Supreme Court if she has to. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
Today, President Biden met with the Federal Reserve Chair and Treasury Secretary to get an update on the state of the nation's financial institutions. NTD's Steve Lance has more from D.C.
President Biden met with financial regulators to discuss the state of the country's financial institutions. Topping the agenda were the issues of inclusion and climate change.
There is, of course, a couple of items on the proactive agenda, and when it's concluded, we'll provide a readout, including the state of the country's financial institutions, work that they're all doing to promote financial stability, implementation updates around climate-related financial risk, agency actions on financial inclusion and access to credit.
Biden's Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen was at the meeting. She had made it clear that the president's climate agenda will be a major focus throughout her tenure as Treasury Secretary. Among others present in the meeting today was Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, who was previously nominated by former President Trump. This was the first time President Biden and Powell have met since Biden took office. Inside of the White House press briefing today, Press Secretary Jen Psaki was asked whether or not President Biden had confidence in Powell, and she sort of sidestepped the question.
The president's view is this is a routine meeting with financial regulators to get an update on management of the economy and making credit accessible to people across the country.
Following the meeting, the White House issued a statement saying that the American financial system is strong. But there's a bigger question looming, the infrastructure deal. A bipartisan group of senators are waiting for President Biden to lean in. Some expect him to work something out with the group this week. Steve Lance, NTD News, Washington, D.C.
Senate Leader Chuck Schumer is helping Senator Bernie Sanders to write up a $6 trillion infrastructure package. In it, they want to expand Medicare coverage. But a health care policy director tells NTD he thinks this idea is problematic. NTD's Melina Weiskup has the details on the Democrats' new proposal.
Democratic Socialist Bernie Sanders is working on a $6 trillion spending plan. It'll fund a variety of social programs like universal child care, affordable housing, Medicare expansion, and more. These are items President Biden tried to pass in his infrastructure proposal, but he didn't have the votes to make it happen.
I sometimes think we get boggled down in numbers, and that's important, but we got to look at what the needs are of the American people, what's going on right now.
Sanders wants to expand Medicare coverage to include dental, vision, and hearing, a plan Senate Leader Chuck Schumer endorsed. But some warn that this kind of spending could backfire, as Medicare is projected to run out of funds by 2026.
We've been spending more annually than we're taking into the trust fund. And so right now we expect in 2026 what will happen is that there won't be enough money left to pay out all the beneficiary costs. There will still be money coming in, so there will still be money that can be spent, but it won't be sufficient to meet the demand. And at that point, the federal government will have to offset those Medicare costs from other federal revenue.
And Republicans have drawn a hard line against using massive spending packages to fund social welfare programs. They're concerned about a vast expansion of the federal government, the government playing more and more of a role in the lives of everyday American citizens. They're also concerned about inflation and the national debt limit. So this leaves Sanders and Schumer to try to pass this with only Democrat votes.
We also know another thing. Our unity is our strength. With 50 votes, we all have to be on board to produce that kind of change.
But some Democrats aren't on board just yet. Senator Jon Tester plainly rejects the idea with a no. Moderate Democrat Joe Manchin responded cautiously, saying, "We have to be conscious of the debt." And Senator Mark Warner says he supports the goal of having 2 infrastructure packages, but he doesn't agree with more liberal colleagues on how much to spend. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
A new candidate is in the race for Idaho governor next year. He's best known for leading an armed occupation of a federal wildlife refuge in 2016. NTD's Allison Lee reports.
Idaho rancher Ammon Bundy announced his bid for governor on Saturday, running as a Republican. He made national headlines in 2016 for leading a couple dozen men to occupy the headquarters of the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge in eastern Oregon for over a month. Bundy explained the reasoning behind the occupation.
We're going to start assisting the people in claiming, as I've said, their lands and resources. But what that will be is we are going to go back into the records. We're going to identify who's using the land at this time.
Bundy's campaign promises include eliminating all taxes except the sales tax, taking back land for Idaho from federal control, ending abortions, and protecting Second Amendment rights. He explains in his campaign video he's running because he's tired of seeing Americans' freedoms being taken away.
We cannot afford to have state leadership that lets the federal government bully us or walk all over us. And it is an unfair fight when the federal government unlawfully attacks the people.
At least 6 other candidates are already in the race for Idaho governor. In the Republican primary next year, Bundy is going to compete against his state's lieutenant governor, Janice McGeachin, and possibly sitting governor Brad Little. The lieutenant governor is currently leading, and she has been clashing with the governor over pandemic measures recently. Allison Lee, NTD News.
The U.S. is following Canada's action from Friday to restrict non-essential travel across the northern border until July 21st. On Sunday, the Department of Homeland Security extended pandemic-driven non-essential travel restrictions. The move applies to border crossings with both Canada and Mexico. In March 2020, the U.S. and Canada mutually agreed to close the border to help prevent virus spread. It's unclear whether the restrictions will extend beyond July 21st or how they'll impact travel by land or ferry between the U.S. and Canada or Mexico. In a tweet, the Department of Homeland Security noted positive developments, saying that progress is made, restrictions may be eased safely and sustainably. Tourists are coming back to D.C., but it's not the same as before the pandemic. The travelers are nearly all from within the U.S., but business travel to the capital seems on track to recover fully by as early as next year.
The U.S. Capitol is beginning to buzz. Bookings for meetings and conventions are starting to expand. Destination DC says it expects business travel to the district will be back to pre-pandemic levels by late 2022 or early 2023. And more people are coming for leisure, too. The city is 100% open, with all pandemic capacity restrictions lifted. Local station WTOP says in the year to March 2021, the city lost $477 million in tax revenue, following a 70% drop in spending from travelers. Destination DC says domestic visitation could reach 14 to 15 million people this year, and even 19 million by 2022. But it says international travelers likely won't return to pre-pandemic levels until 2025 due to travel bans on several European countries. Last year, WTOP says domestic tourists total about 7 million people, with few international tourists, compared to 2019, when 24.6 million people traveled to Washington, D.C., 93% domestic and 7% international.
Up next, tropical storm Claudette hit multiple states in the south on the weekend. Alabama was hit the hardest, with many casualties, including a number of children. Now it's heading northeast after losing strength. And New York City's Metropolitan Museum of Art is set to host an exhibit from the original celebrity influencers, the Renaissance-era Medici family. It will include over 90 pieces of 600-year-old art. More in just a moment on NTD News. A A devastating crash on a storm-drenched highway in Alabama took the lives of 9 children and 1 adult. NTD's Christina Kim reports.
A horrific accident in Alabama on Saturday took the lives of 8 children between the ages of 4 and 17. They were from a youth home for abused or neglected children called Tallapoosa County Girls Ranch. The accident also claimed the lives of 29-year-old Cody Fox and his 9-month-old daughter Ariana, who were in a separate vehicle. Fox's co-worker said he ran a hot tub business with his father and that he was a doting father himself. His daughter was his life. Multiple people were injured as well. The director of the youth ranch was the sole survivor.
She was trapped in the van. She was unconscious, and they were able to pull her from the van, and her life was saved.
The multi-car accident involved at least 15 vehicles on Interstate 65 south of Montgomery. Butler County Coroner Wayne Garlick said it's likely the cars hydroplaned on the wet roads, and the site of the accident is notorious for hydroplaning. This as Tropical Depression Claudette brought torrential rain and wind to the area. Claudette regained strength back up to a tropical storm on Monday as it heads towards the Atlantic Ocean. A GoFundMe account was set up for Tallapoosa County Girls Ranch to help with funeral expenses, medical costs, and counseling for those affected by the crash. The CEO of the group met with the youth director, who is in the hospital.
And she said, "Please tell my girls I love them." She still cares about the girls that are here at the ranch, and we're grieving right now.
Alabama's Governor Kay Ivey said her heart goes out to the loved ones of all who perished. Christina Kim, NTD News.
And Alabama's governor just declared a state of emergency over the tropical storm. While she announced it today, it's retroactive, making the state of emergency start on Friday, June 18th. She says this is to make sure affected areas have enough resources to deal with the storm. And as it's hurricane season in the Atlantic, and Claudette is the first storm to make landfall. It hit Alabama and Louisiana on Saturday and is now regaining strength. NTD's Arian Pazdar has more.
On Monday, Claudette regained tropical status and headed out to sea from the North Carolina coast. It's less than 2 days after the system killed 14 people in Alabama, including 8 children who died in a highway crash. The storm left a trail of devastation across Alabama. A 24-year-old man and a 3-year-old boy were killed Saturday when a tree fell on their house. A 23-year-old woman died after her car ran off the road into a swollen creek. And a search is underway for a man believed to have fallen into the water during flash flooding. By Monday, Claudette reached maximum sustained winds of 40 miles per hour. The storm was 30 miles south of Norfolk, Virginia, moving northeast at around 30 miles per hour. By late Monday, it made its way back out to the sea and is forecast to become a post-tropical remnant by Tuesday noontime. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
And another tornado today, a Chicago suburb left with destruction after the storm came through this morning.
Severe thunderstorms tore through the Chicago area on Sunday night. The National Weather Service said it confirmed a large and extremely dangerous tornado had touched down in a western suburb of the city, causing damage. Roofs and siding were ripped from houses. It also left downed trees and debris. More than 22,000 customers were without power as the thunderstorm swept through the region near Lake Michigan. The tornado touched down around 11 p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday. CBS Chicago says about a dozen homes were damaged and 4 people were rushed to area hospitals with minor injuries. The outlet says 6 people were injured in total, and some residents were evacuated to nearby shelters. There were no fires, but lots of gas breaches.
New York State is downscaling mass vaccination sites. Officials say the focus has to be shifted now. On Monday, 4 mass vaccination sites throughout the state are shutting down. That's after New York reached its goal of vaccinating 70% of its residents. But some neighborhoods haven't yet to meet the quote, like Brooklyn and the Bronx. There, just about half of residents have gotten at least 1 shot. Now, Governor Cuomo says the focus should be shifted to neighborhoods with higher hesitancy rates. Smaller vaccination sites will be opened up in those neighborhoods in the coming weeks. And the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City will soon host an exhibition of the Medici family. The exhibit will include over 90 pieces of art crafted during the Italian Renaissance. NTD's Jason Perry went to the Met Museum to find out more.
The exhibition is not yet open to the public, but the press was able to get a sneak preview of the new Medici art exhibit. All of the artwork was commissioned between 1512 and 1570. This picture here was painted by Raphael. The Medici family attained their wealth when they funded the Medici Bank, which became the largest bank in Italy. Art critic William Newton related the significance of the Medici family to modern times.
You can compare them to whatever sort of suddenly rich family in America that you want to, the Kardashians, the Trumps, you name it, people who became very famous and very rich very fast and essentially bought their way into society.
There were also 4 Medici popes. The Medici family influenced the Renaissance period as they were patrons of Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Galileo, and others in the arts and sciences. As they became wealthy and established, they started marrying into other aristocratic families. According to Newton, this is when the family started to develop expensive tastes and acquired more lavish clothing and accessories. This is reflected in some of the artwork.
They don't necessarily give you a lot of psychological insight into the person in a way that we might expect from a modern portrait. A lot of times it's to show, look how much this suit cost. Look how much this dress cost. Look how many jewels I have.
If this family was around today, they may have been seen taking selfies on social media.
Just normal people who don't necessarily know a lot about art, but who understand how our celeb kind of culture works, and people getting endorsement deals and people sort of having millions and millions of dollars for doing nothing other than TikTok videos. This is kind of where that all started.
The Medici exhibit will be open here at the Metropolitan Museum of Art from June 26th until October 11th. Jason Perry, NTD News, New York.
No matter how you slice it, Americans love their pizza, especially in New York and Chicago. NTD's Phil Zoe tells us how much pizza restaurant foot traffic has increased in the cities since the beginning of this year.
Pizza is getting more and more popular across the U.S., especially in Chicago and New York. How about getting some pizza at the Nomad Piazza?
Visits to pizzerias and Italian restaurants are up 49% in America.
Amazing.
The best pizza, which is like New York, so.
I love pizza.
In New York City, visits are up a whopping 82%.
So fast, it's so easy to get, it's comfort food. It's the true American comfort food.
People go out, people come to eat, we get more delivery.
Beat out only by Chicago at 85%.
It's picking up, better than before, yes.
By the end of this year, should be good, We should be getting back to normal by the end of this year.
Zenreach Marketing says numbers will continue to go up as cities open up and indoor mask mandates eliminated. Phil Zoe, NTD News, New York.
Coming up, proof of vaccine records goes digital on the West Coast. Californians now have the option to obtain a copy of their vaccine status electronically. More in just a moment on NTD News.
The wait is finally over. Shen Yun returns to the stage with an all-new production filled with beauty, majesty, and a powerful message of hope. Discover the lost culture of ancient China. Discover this season, Shen Yun 2021. Coming to the Palace Theater, June 26th and 27th. Tickets at shenyun.com/Stamford.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. Thanks to your support, you've helped make MyPillow become one of the fastest growing companies in America. Over the last 12 years, you've helped MyPillow create thousands of jobs right here in the USA.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
That's why I invented MyPillow. My patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs and helps keep your neck supported and aligned. I'm interrupting this commercial right now. Retailers have canceled MyPillow, and to thank you for your support, I'm going to pass the savings directly on to you. For example, you get my 6-piece towel sets, regular $109.99, now only $44.98, or MyPillow dog beds for as low as $19.99 with your promo code.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit MyPillow.com.
Hey Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry, I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey,
Why don't we go find out? Listen.
Can birds draw pictures?
I don't have an answer for that.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
California now allows vaccinated people to obtain a digital copy of their vaccine card. They say it's not mandatory and is intended to help those show proof in case their physical card is misplaced. NTD's David Lamb speaks to several Californians for their comments.
California rolled out its electronic vaccine card online, intended to help Californians verify their vaccination status. Most of the locals said they didn't know about the digital card, but they shared their thoughts.
As far as traveling goes, I know places like Hawaii, you actually need to have your card physically sometimes when you're traveling. So I think it's a good thing.
Another local thinks with safeguards that it's a good idea, but he also says businesses are still requiring people to wear masks. He claims that people are putting safety on a pedestal, changing what he sees as American.
Land of the cautious and home of, I gotta be safe, I gotta be safe. I want to get back to America where we remain the land of the free and the home of the brave.
One local prefers to stick with his physical card.
I just feel like it's easier. I just feel like it's easier because some stuff might get messed up in the computer and stuff. So I just feel like it's easier to carry the card around.
Two people who didn't want to speak on camera were skeptical about the vaccine and verification system. They claim that when these services are free and widely promoted, there may be more behind it. On Monday, Santa Clara County officials announced that they are phasing out the county's final local health orders. The county was considered to have one of the most restrictive orders in the state. David Lamb, NTD News, California.
Fire season is starting in California again. One fire has been burning over the weekend and is nowhere near containment yet. Here's NTD's Eileen Ang with more information.
The Willow Fire in Big Sur has burned over 2,300 acres and is still at 0% containment as of June 21st. Smoke can be seen from afar as firefighters battle the fire on the ground and from helicopters. The forest terrain adds to its difficulty.
It is so steep and brushy and remote that we cannot get fire trucks anywhere near it, and we can't even hike in. It's that steep where it is. It's deep in the wilderness. So what we've been doing is dropping water with helicopters and retardant with fixed-wing aircraft.
Currently, the cooler temperatures and higher humidity is keeping it from spreading faster. The blaze started last Thursday on June 17th at around 8 p.m. It quickly grew over the weekend due to hot temperatures combined with windy conditions and low humidity. The cause of the wildfire is still unknown. The fire was spreading north rapidly, but has slowed down. Evacuation orders from Tassajara Zen Center to China Camp have been in effect since Friday. Last year, the Dolan fire burned 124,000 acres further south of Big Sur. It took 4 months to put it out. The Willow Fire is currently not burning into any part of where the Dolan fire was. Eileen Ang, NTD News, California.
Coming up, a top Chinese spy may have just defected to the U.S. The man reportedly provided intelligence relevant to the origin of the CCP virus. And Hong Kong's pro-democracy newspaper Apple Daily could be shut down within the week. The board of the company will make a final decision on Friday. Find out more here on NTD News. A top Chinese spy has reportedly defected to the U.S. Some sources say that he passed on important information about the origin of the virus, names of Chinese spies in the U.S., and more. NTD's Tiffany Meyer reports.
Rumors are circulating that China's top spy catcher has defected to America. According to Chinese and English language media outlets, the intelligence he brought may shed light on the origin of the pandemic. Both U.S. and Chinese officials have stayed silent so far. NTD cannot independently verify the details. But conservative media Red State and intelligence news site Spy Talk claim they've confirmed from separate sources that the Chinese man's name is Dong Jingwei. Dong is Vice Minister of China's Ministry of State Security. That's Beijing's intelligence security and secret police agency. Chinese state media reports that he's responsible for the ministry's counterintelligence efforts, that is, to catch spies. According to Red State, Dong fled to the U.S. in February and has been working with the Defense Intelligence Agency, or DIA, for months. The agency is part of the Department of Defense and the U.S. intelligence community. He's reportedly submitted critical information to DIA that includes the Chinese regime's early studies about the CCP virus, known as COVID-19. Models predicting virus spread and its potential damage to the U.S. and the world, as well as the names of Americans who provide intelligence to the Chinese regime, and names of Chinese spies working in the U.S. He also claimed the Chinese regime has gained access to a CIA communication system, leading to the deaths of more than 10 Chinese people who had worked with the CIA. On June 18th, just days after news about Dong's defection, China's state-controlled media reported that he had spoken at a seminar on Friday. But unlike standard news articles, the report did not mention where the seminar took place, nor did it contain any photos of Dong. It also claimed that at the seminar, Dong cautioned Chinese spies to watch out for moles who work with foreign forces. Speaking to Radio Free Asia, former U.S. diplomat Matthew James Brazil said the Chinese regime published the piece in an attempt to debunk the rumors about Dong's defection. He took special notice of the lack of a photo, saying if he were Beijing, he would have at least added a picture of Dong to show that he's still in China. The story has caused heated debate. Senior member of the Republican National Committee, Solomon Yue, is now betting his committee seat that the rumors are true. Yue told a Chinese language media that he had confirmed the news from what he called a reliable source. Dong's intel about the Chinese regime's infiltration into the CIA fell in line with a New York Times article from 2017. The newspaper reported that between 2010 and 2012, Beijing deconstructed the CIA's operations in China by killing or jailing over a dozen of the agency's sources in the country. One of them was reportedly shot in a government courtyard in front of his colleagues to send a message to other CIA informants. At the time, some U.S. investigators suspected that China may have hacked the CIA's covert system, used talk with foreign sources. Other reports also suggest Beijing's infiltration into the CIA. In May 2019, then CIA officer Kevin Patrick Mallory was charged with spying for China. He was later sentenced to 20 years in prison. In November of the same year, another officer, Li Zhenchen, admitted to providing secret intelligence to Beijing. He was sentenced to 19 years. China will likely face a dilemma over the origins of the CCP virus. That's according to U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. He told Fox News in an interview on Sunday that China will face isolation if it does not cooperate with probes into the origins of the virus.
Either they will allow, in a responsible way, investigators in to do the real work of figuring out where this came from, or they will face isolation in the international community.
The origins of the CCP virus remain a mystery, even after almost 2 years. A team led by the World Health Organization, or WHO, spent 4 weeks in and around Wuhan with Chinese researchers earlier this year. In its report, the team claimed that the virus probably transmitted from bats to humans, and that introduction through a laboratory incident was extremely unlikely. But experts said some data have been withheld. And the U.S. mission to the UN said in a statement last month that the WHO study was insufficient and inconclusive. Sullivan says the U.S. won't count on China to find out about the virus origins without external pressure.
It is that diplomatic spadework, rallying the nations of the world, imposing political and diplomatic pressure on China.
He says the Biden administration will cooperate with the intelligence community and allies to press the matter on every front until they find a result. But in another interview with CNN, Sullivan says the current administration will not apply any immediate pressure on the CCP over the matter. Last month, President Biden ordered aides to find answers to the origins of the virus. He said they will be looking at rival theories, including the lab leak theory. But Beijing claimed that politicizing the issue will hamper investigations.
Hong Kong pro-democracy newspaper Apple Daily may be forced to shut down in a matter of days. This after authorities froze the company's assets under a sweeping national security law. Soraya Ali reports.
The pro-democracy Hong Kong newspaper Apple Daily could be shut down by Saturday after police carried out raids and arrests under the city's national security law. Reuters saw an internal memo to staff saying the board would decide whether the company continues to operate on Friday. If they decide to shut down, June 26th will be the final edition. Apple Daily is a popular tabloid owned by Laos Next Digital. It was founded 26 years ago and has been a strong critic of the Hong Kong and Beijing governments. Its owner, Jimmy Lai, was arrested under Hong Kong's national security law last year and has had his assets frozen. Last week, police raided the newspaper and arrested senior executives for alleged collusion with a foreign country. Police said dozens of Apple Daily articles were suspected of violating the new security law, making it the first case in which authorities have cited media articles as potentially violating the contentious legislation. 3 companies related to Apple Daily are also being prosecuted for collusion with a foreign country, and authorities have frozen around $2.3 million of their assets. The arrests and scale of the Apple Daily raid have been criticized by Western countries, global rights groups, press associations, and the chief UN spokesperson for human rights. China's Foreign Commissioner's office said on Thursday the national security law protected press freedom and warned external forces to keep their hands off Hong Kong.
Coming up, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson is optimistic about ending pandemic restrictions on July 19th, but he hasn't ruled out more lockdowns this winter. And a garden in Versailles just got restored, and it has some special surprises for its visitors. That and more on NTD News.
With Shepherd Lock, you can unlock your door by touching the deadbolt. Shepherd also boosts your home's security by proactively freezing in place if anyone ever tries to tamper with your lock or break down your door. We also make it easy to manage keys without hiding them under the mat. Easily create temporary keys for house guests, neighbors, or anyone else. Installation takes less than 5 minutes. Visit shepherdlock.com to buy your Shepherd Lock today, and for a limited time, enjoy 10% off.
Hi folks, Joe Namath here, and if you're on Medicare, this is important. You're now entitled to eliminate co-pays and get dental care, dentures, eyeglasses, prescription coverage, in-home aids, unlimited transportation, and home-delivered meals, all at no additional cost. Plus, your zip code may have coverage with the Give Back benefit that adds money back to your Social Security check every month.
I called to get dental, transportation, meals, and the Give Back benefit.
With this virus situation, I called to get everything I'm entitled to. I couldn't believe I was missing out on so many benefits.
With the uncertainty of the virus, you need to get everything you're entitled to. Millions of people have trusted the Medicare coverage helpline. You can too. Call now. It's free.
Call 1-800-764-1930. That's 1-800-764-1930 now.
Kids will be kids, which just goes to say kids will be curious. They get into everything, everything. If there's a loaded firearm in the house, they could get their hands on that too. Keeping firearms locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition in a place inaccessible to kids can help keep your loved ones safe from family fire. Safe gun storage saves lives.
UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson says it's looking good to end pandemic restrictions on July 19th, but he hasn't ruled out more lockdowns this winter. NTD's Jane Werrell brings us this report from London.
The Prime Minister says the end of lockdown could now be the 19th of July. Amid calls to ease restrictions sooner, he wouldn't rule out future lockdowns.
Will you rule out the potential for future lockdowns, potentially as early as this winter, because of changes in the pandemic?
I think you can never exclude that there will be some new disease, some new horror that we simply haven't budgeted for or accounted for. But looking at where we are, looking at the efficacy of the vaccines against all variants that we can currently see, so Alpha, Delta, the lot of them, Kappa, I think it's looking good for July the 19th to be that terminus point.
It comes as the government pushed for more people to get jabbed, as they say the cases of the Indian variant are rising. More than 42 million people in the UK have had their first dose of the vaccine. By the weekend, vaccinations had been offered to all over 18s in England. Many young people queued outside London's Olympic Stadium and the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in North London. Looking at those queues over the weekend, it seems like for a lot of people, queuing for the jab is as much about getting your freedoms back or wanting your freedoms back than actually being worried about the virus. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's much more to do with people wanting their freedoms back. But to a certain extent, I think people have been duped. Certainly speaking to my own teenage daughters and their friends, they are wanting to get vaccines because they want to go on holiday, they want to go to concerts. In fact, my own two daughters have decided not to take the vaccine because they don't need it medically and there are too many risks involved. If you look at adults that have had their vaccines, I've had my vaccines, my wife's had hers, and we were all told we would get all these various freedoms back well before now. And the goalposts just continually keep on being moved.
What's your reaction to the delay to the end of the restrictions? This looks like it might be delayed till July the 19th now.
If we compare to last year, where no one was vaccinated, the deaths per day last year, when we were coming out of lockdown, were 10 times what they are now, and the admissions to hospital were 4 times what they are now, and yet it went ahead. So there's no excuse to stop it. It should have gone ahead.
The government's goal is to have everyone over 50 offered the jab and as many people vaccinated before July the 19th. Jane Werrell, NTD News, London.
The UK Prime Minister refuses to guarantee the lifting of travel restrictions for those who received both vaccine doses, saying the priority is to stop the virus coming back. NTD's David English brings us the latest on this.
I think
Boris Johnson on Monday played down reports that foreign travel restrictions may be lifted for those who have received 2 vaccinations. He instead admitted it's going to be a difficult year for travel.
There will be hassle, there will be delays, I'm afraid, because the priority has got to be to keep the country safe.
Pressed by a reporter during a visit to a laboratory in Hertfordshire.
So no guarantees on an exemption from quarantine for travellers who are double jabbed?
We're looking at it, but I want to stress that the emphasis is going to be on making sure that we can protect the country from the virus coming back in.
This comes a day after Justice Secretary Robert Buckland said ministers had not ruled out relaxing restrictions. Travellers coming from amber list countries need to quarantine for 10 days upon return. That's even if you have been vaccinated. The amber list includes most popular summer hotspots such as Spain, Italy and Greece. The first checkpoint review since the traffic light system was introduced is due to take place next Monday.
A well-known UK chocolate maker has bought a beauty product business for the tiny sum of £4. NTD's Neil Woodrow has got the details.
Hotel Chocolat have bought a beauty product business called Rabot 1745 for only £4, less than the price of their cheapest box of chocolates. And it's turned out to be quite a sweet deal. Hotel Chocolat already owned nearly half of the shares in Rabot. It helped set up the business 5 years ago. The idea was to create a range of beauty products inspired by the company's cacao farm in St. Lucia. Rabot's products are said to be popular across the UK as well as in St Lucia and Japan. Though its products won some awards, the company lost around £400,000 last year. Hotel Chocolat says it is well placed to leverage the value of Rabot's inventory and develop its beauty products. Hotel Chocolat chairman Andrew Jerry is selling his 40% stake in Rabot 1745 to his company Hotel Chocolat for around £3. The other investors are selling their shares for around £1 between them. Jerry is also set to receive repayment of the loan he made to the beauty company of over £740,000, but not in cash. Instead, he'll gain 200,000 more shares in the British chocolatier, increasing his stake by around 40%. Neil Woodrow, NTD News, Westminster, London.
In France's Versailles, there's a garden where Queen Marie Antoinette is said to have enjoyed walking. A secluded place where she had the idea to create a signature floral perfume. NTD's David Vives has the story.
Versailles in bloom. Summer is a perfect time to visit the castle gardens, one of which is now restored. This place was built for Queen Marie Antoinette to have somewhere secluded to walk, away from the noise of the castle and the king's court.
Queen Marie Antoinette managed the creation of this landscape garden. She got the best botanists and agronomists and used trees coming from North America.
Véronique Ciampini knows every inch of this garden. She oversaw its restoration, which included bringing back all plants, flowers and trees of the time.
This tulip tree from Virginia resists all storms. The Queen chose it for its magnificent flowers.
It is here that the Queen got the inspiration to create floral perfume for women, something that did not exist at the time.
The Queen loved flowers. The colors she preferred were the white, powdered rose, and apricot tones. Some of the flowers and trees were chosen for their perfume.
This garden was completely designed as a piece of art. The king's gardener set the rules for pretty much everything here. The shape of the trees, the size of the leaves, the different flowers' colors, and the moment when they bloom, even the different tones of green. According to Ciampini, the garden is crafted following French traditions. It offers little surprises to whoever walks along the way and also shows a taste for symmetry and balance in the placement of the plants. The garden reopened along with the castle, and both are welcoming the first summer visitors who can enjoy a calm castle before most tourists start coming back. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox. We have a new channel. Subscribe to us on YouTube at NTD News. Get the highlights of our news broadcast and the most important headlines that we curate especially for you.
Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.